Let me tell you something right up front. This ain't about hating nobody, and it ain't about putting one group above another. This is about understanding the game, understanding perception, and learning how to win in a world that don't always judge everybody the same way. See, life don't hand out the same rule book to everybody. And if you don't recognize that, you can get offended, bitter, or confused real quick. But if you do recognize it, you can prepare, elevate, and dominate anyway. Now people love to talk about this idea of firing white people versus firing black people. And when that conversation comes up, emotions run high. But listen to me carefully. This ain't about race as an excuse. This is about reality, responsibility, and performance. Sometimes when a white person messes up, folks say, hey, they made a mistake. When a black person messes up, they say, see, that's why. That pressure is real. That spotlight is brighter. And instead of complaining about it, you got to decide what you're going to do with that truth. Here's what I learned coming up. When you know you're being judged harder, you can either break under it or you can rise above it. I told myself a long time ago, I can't afford to be average. I couldn't show up late. I couldn't half step. I couldn't be sloppy because I knew if I slipped, it wouldn't just be my mistake. It would be a statement. And that ain't fair, but fairness don't pay bills. Excellence does. Let me say this clearly. Nobody should be fired because of their color, period. But people do get fired because of performance, attitude, consistency, and trust. And when you come from a background where people already doubt you, you don't get the luxury of proving yourself later. You got to prove yourself every single day. That means being so good they can't ignore you, so prepared they can't replace you, and so professional they can't deny you. I learned that you don't win by demanding equal treatment, you win by delivering undeniable results. When you become valuable, when you solve problems, when you bring solutions instead of excuses, the conversation changes. The same people who were quick to judge you become afraid to lose you. That's not luck. That's discipline. That's focus. That's hunger. And let me flip this on you for a second. If you're in a position of leadership, don't you ever judge people by stereotypes. Judge them by standards. Judge them by work ethic. Judge them by character. Because when you do that, you build real teams, real success, and real respect. Everybody deserves an opportunity, but everybody also has a responsibility to rise to it. The truth most people avoid is that the rules of life are not evenly applied, and the moment you accept that without bitterness is the moment you begin to grow. Too many people waste their best years arguing with reality instead of mastering it. They spend energy demanding fairness from a world that has never promised it, and while they're busy complaining, opportunities quietly pass them by. The real power move is understanding that unequal rules don't eliminate your chances. They simply redefine the level of effort required. When you recognize that the bar is higher for you, you stop aiming for the bar and start aiming beyond it. Here's the hook. Most people miss pressure is not your enemy. Comfort is. Pressure reveals who's serious. Pressure exposes preparation. When the expectations are heavier, the environment tougher, and the margin for error smaller, that's not a curse. It's a training ground. Diamonds don't come from soft soil. They come from pressure that refuses to let up. Once you understand this, you stop asking why it's harder for you and start asking how strong you can become because of it. Exceptional effort is the great equalizer. Not average effort, not good enough effort. Exceptional effort, the kind that shows up early when nobody is watching and stays late when nobody is clapping. The kind that studies when others sleep and practices when others relax and prepares for moments most people assume will never come. When your effort becomes exceptional, it creates a gap between you and everyone who's still waiting for fair treatment. That gap is where success lies. Another hard truth is this: people don't reward potential. They reward reliability. You may be talented, gifted, even brilliant, but talent without consistency is just entertainment. Consistency is what builds trust, and trust is what keeps doors open when things get uncomfortable. When the rules are uneven, consistency becomes your shield. Every time you deliver, every time you exceed expectations, every time you remain professional under pressure, you weaken every assumption made about you. Not with arguments, but with results. There's a moment in every person's journey where they must decide whether they want sympathy or success. Sympathy feels good for a moment, but it never changes your position. Success, on the other hand, demands sacrifice, discipline, and patience, but it changes everything. When your effort becomes exceptional, people stop questioning whether you belong in the room and start wondering how they would function without you. Let this sink in. The people who rise the highest are often the ones who had the least margin for error, that they learned early that mistakes cost more, that excuses travel nowhere, and that excellence is not optional. Instead of resenting that reality, they used it as fuel. They turned awareness into strategy, pressure into precision, and obstacles into leverage. The real shift happens when you stop seeing unequal rules as a signal to quit and start seeing them as a signal to level up. When effort becomes intentional, focused, and relentless, you stop reacting to the environment and start controlling your outcomes. The world may not adjust its standards for you, but it will eventually adjust its expectations of you. And when that happens, you're no longer chasing fairness. You're operating from strength, confidence, and undeniable value. Most people like to talk about what they could do if given the right chance, the right support, or the right moment, but the world does not operate on potential. It operates on proof. Potential is invisible until it is converted into performance, and performance is the only language that decision makers truly understand. You may be gifted, intelligent, creative, and capable, but none of that matters if it does not show up in measurable results. The uncomfortable truth is that opportunities are not extended to those who promise. They are extended to those who deliver. Here's the hook that wakes people up. Nobody owes you belief. Belief is earned, and it is earned through consistency. Every time you show up prepared, every time you meet a deadline without excuses, every time you handle responsibility without supervision, you deposit trust into an account that eventually starts paying dividends. On the flip side, every missed commitment, every late arrival, every unfinished task quietly withdraws from that same account. People may smile, but they remember. Performance builds a reputation long before words ever do. In environments where competition is real and expectations are high, talent alone is rarely enough. Talent may get you noticed once, but reliability is what keeps your name in the conversation. The individual who consistently performs at a high level becomes predictable in the best possible way. Leaders don't have to wonder if the job will get done. They already know. That certainty is priceless. It is why some people are protected during difficult times while others are easily replaced, even if they appear equally skilled on paper. There is also a discipline required to sustain performance that most people underestimate. Performing well once is easy. Performing well repeatedly under pressure, without praise, without immediate reward, is where professionalism separates itself from enthusiasm. True professionals do not wait to be motivated. They operate from standards. They understand that excellence is not an event but a habit, and habits are built through intentional daily choices that nobody applauds. Another reality many avoid is that performance exposes character. When pressure increases, excuses multiply for those who are unprepared. Deadlines suddenly feel unfair. Expectations feel unreasonable. But high performers respond differently. They adjust, adapt, and find solutions. They ask better questions instead of offering explanations. Over time, this response pattern reshapes how others view them. They stop being seen as just capable and start being seen as dependable, which is a far more valuable currency. The workplace, the industry, and the world at large do not promote effort. They promote outcomes. Hard work is respected, but results are rewarded. This is why two people can work equally long hours and still experience very different trajectories. One focuses on activity, the other focuses on impact. Performance is about effectiveness, not business. It is about understanding what truly moves the needle and delivering on it consistently. When you embrace the reality that performance is the standard, your mindset changes. You stop waiting for recognition and start creating reasons to be recognized. You stop advertising your potential and start demonstrating your value. In doing so, you gain leverage, and leverage is what turns opportunity into longevity, respect, and influence. Average is often presented as acceptable, even safe, but for some people, average comes at a much higher cost. When you are already being evaluated through a sharper lens, blending in is not protection, it is risk. Average effort produces average results, and average results rarely survive in environments where expectations are uneven. The moment you understand that, you realize that doing just enough is not neutral. It is dangerous. In spaces where scrutiny is intense, average does not go unnoticed. It becomes the reason you are questioned. Here is the hook most people don't want to hear. The world does not punish you for being different as much as it punishes you for being replaceable. Average makes you easy to overlook and even easier to remove. When your contribution looks like everyone else's, there is no compelling reason to fight for you. This is why excellence is not about ego. It is about survival. Standing out through quality, discipline, and impact creates distance between you and the exit door. People often misunderstand excellence, assuming it requires perfection. It does not. Excellence is about intentionality. It is the decision to prepare more thoroughly, communicate more clearly, and execute more cleanly than what is expected. It is the discipline to double, check details others rush through, and the maturity to take responsibility when something falls short. Over time, these choices compound, and what once felt like extra effort becomes your baseline. In high-pressure environments, perception carries weight. When your work consistently reflects depth precision, people begin to associate your name with reliability and quality. That association changes conversations you are not even in. Decisions get made in rooms where you are absent, and excellence ensures your reputation speaks in your favor. Average work, however, leaves your story incomplete, allowing assumptions to fill in the gaps. There is also a psychological advantage to refusing average. When you set a higher internal standard, external pressure loses its power. You are no longer performing to avoid criticism, you are performing to meet your own expectations. That shift builds confidence that is steady, not reactive. You stop being shaken by opinions because your self-assessment is rooted in preparation and results. Confidence built this way is quiet but unbreakable. Another overlooked truth is that excellence attracts opportunity. People naturally gravitate toward those who elevate the environment. They trust them with more responsibility, more visibility, and more influence. This is not favoritism, it is logic. When the stakes are high, leaders choose those who have already demonstrated they can handle weight. Average performance never gets that invitation because it has never proven capacity. Choosing excellence is not about overworking or burning out. It is about precision. It is about knowing which areas demand your highest focus and delivering there without compromise. It is about refusing shortcuts that weaken your credibility and rejecting habits that dilute your potential. When you commit to being exceptional, average no longer tempts you because you understand its true price. The moment you decide that average is too expensive, your actions begin to align with a higher standard. You become more deliberate, more consistent, and more aware of how your work represents you. In environments where scrutiny exists, excellence is not extra, it is essential. There is a moment of awakening that separates progress from stagnation, and it begins when you realize that arguing about bias rarely changes outcomes, but becoming undeniable always does. Bias exists in many forms, subtle and obvious, spoken, unspoken, and pretending it doesn't exist is naive. But living in constant confrontation with it can quietly drain your momentum. The truth is, the world does not pause long enough to resolve every unfair assumption before moving forward. While some people are busy explaining why the system is flawed, others are busy mastering it. Here is the hook most people resist: being right does not guarantee being rewarded. You can win every argument and still lose the opportunity. Influence belongs to those who add value, not those who demand validation. When you shift your focus from proving injustice to proving excellence, the conversation around you changes, not because people suddenly become fair, but because your contribution becomes too important to dismiss. Becoming undeniable is not about silence or submission. It is about strategy. It is choosing to let results speak louder than frustration. When your work consistently solves problems, improves outcomes, and elevates standards, it reframes how others engage with you. Resistance weakens when replacement becomes costly. At that point, bias does not disappear, but it loses leverage. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is internal. The moment you stop measuring your progress by how others treat you and start measuring it by how effectively you perform, your energy returns. You stop reacting and start executing. Reaction keeps you emotionally invested in things you cannot control. Execution keeps you focused on outcomes you can influence. That difference alone can change the trajectory of your career and your confidence. There is also a discipline in refusing to be distracted by every unfair moment. Not every battle deserves your attention, and not every slight deserves your response. High performers are selective with their energy. They understand that emotional intelligence is not about suppressing emotion, but about directing it. Instead of turning frustration into arguments, they convert it into preparation, skill building, and precision. Another hard truth is that excellence exposes weak assumptions. When people expect less and you deliver more, it creates cognitive dissonance. That discomfort forces a reassessment, not because you demanded it, but because reality demanded it. Over time, this pattern reshapes perception. You are no longer viewed through a narrow lens, but through the evidence of your work. Evidence is difficult to debate. Becoming undeniable also requires patience. Results compound slowly, and recognition often lags behind performance. Many people quit too early mistaking delayed acknowledgement for failure. Those who endure understand that credibility is built over time through repetition and resilience. Each success adds weight. Each challenge handled well adds credibility. And eventually the narrative shifts. There is power in knowing that you do not need permission to excel. When your standards are self-imposed and your execution is consistent, you stop seeking approval. You begin to operate with quiet confidence. That confidence is not loud, but it is persuasive. People trust it. Leaders rely on it. Opportunities gravitate toward it. When you commit to being undeniable, you stop fighting the system head on and start outgrowing it. You become harder to ignore, harder to replace, and harder to underestimate, not because the world suddenly became fair, but because you became formidable. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but in reality it is protection. It is the quiet force that guards your reputation when emotions run high and pressure increases. In environments where assumptions exist and scrutiny is constant, discipline is not optional, it is armor. Without it, talent gets questioned, mistakes get magnified, and intentions get misinterpreted. With it, even under pressure, your actions speak with clarity and authority. Here's the hook that changes perspective. Discipline saves you before trouble ever arrives. Long before a difficult conversation, a performance review, or a critical decision, discipline has already been working on your behalf. It shows up in how you communicate, how you respond, how you prepare, and how you handle moments that test your patience. While others react emotionally, discipline allows you to respond strategically, and that difference can protect years of hard work. Professionalism is one of discipline's strongest expressions. It is not about being perfect or robotic. It is about being consistent and composed. When emotions rise, professionalism keeps your tone steady. When pressure increases, professionalism keeps your focus sharp. People trust what they can predict, and discipline makes you predictable in the best way. Not predictable in effort, but predictable in character. Work ethic is another layer of this protection. When your habits are strong, you don't need to explain yourself often. Your track record does it for you. Discipline creates a pattern of reliability that others come to depend on. And once people depend on you, they think twice before questioning your intent or doubting your capability. Trust built through discipline becomes a buffer during moments when things don't go perfectly. One of the greatest advantages of discipline is how it minimizes damage when mistakes happen, because mistakes will happen. The disciplined individual does not panic, deflect, or deny. They take responsibility, correct quickly, and move forward. That response alone separates professionals from liabilities. Leaders are not looking for flawless people. They are looking for accountable ones. Discipline ensures that when you stumble, you fall forward instead of apart. There is also an internal protection discipline provides that many overlook. It shields you from your own impulses. It prevents temporary emotions from creating permanent consequences. It stops you from saying what feels good in the moment but costs you later. In high-stakes environments, a single undisciplined reaction can undo years of progress. Discipline keeps you aligned with your long-term goals, even when short-term emotions try to take control. Another powerful hook is this: discipline earns you grace. When people know you as disciplined, consistent, and professional, they are more forgiving when circumstances go wrong. They give you the benefit of the doubt. They assume positive intent. That grace is not accidental, it is earned. And it is one of the most valuable forms of protection you can have in competitive spaces. Discipline also sharpens decision making. It encourages preparation over improvisation and foresight over reaction. When you consistently think ahead, anticipate challenges, and plan responses, you reduce vulnerability. You stop being surprised by situations that catch others off guard. That preparedness is visible, and it commands respect even from those who may not openly support you. Perhaps most importantly, discipline builds self-respect. When you honor your commitments, maintain your standards, and control your responses, you trust yourself. That self-trust translates into confidence that is calm, not loud. And calm confidence is powerful. It unsettles doubt, quiets criticism, and reinforces credibility without a single word being spoken. In environments where the margin for error is small, discipline is not about being rigid. It is about being ready. Ready to perform, ready to respond, and ready to protect everything you have worked to build. Most people think winning means proving everyone wrong, but real winning happens when you make the argument unnecessary. Fighting the narrative keeps you trapped inside it, reacting to definitions that were never designed in your favor. Changing the narrative requires a higher level of thinking, one where your focus shifts from resistance to transformation. The moment you stop trying to defend yourself and start building undeniable value, the story around you begins to change on its own. Here's the hook that reframes everything. The loudest voices rarely shape history. The most consistent results do. Narratives survive on repetition, but they collapse under evidence. When you repeatedly deliver excellence, reliability, and impact, you introduce facts that disrupt assumptions. Over time, those facts become the new reference point. People stop describing you by where you come from or what they expected and start describing you by what you produce. Changing the narrative is not about image management. It is about substance. Image fades quickly when pressure hits, but substance holds. Every time you show up prepared, communicate clearly, and execute at a high level, you add weight to your reputation. That weight shifts conversations you are not present for. Decisions begin to include your name with confidence instead of hesitation. This is how narratives evolve quietly, without confrontation. There is also a strategic patience required to change perception. Many people quit too early, expecting instant recognition, but narratives are slow to move because they are built on habit. The key is understanding that every consistent performance weakens the old story. Each success chips away at doubt. Each challenge handled with maturity rewrites expectations. Progress may feel invisible in the moment, but it is accumulating influence beneath the surface. Another powerful hook is this: when you stop fighting labels, you outgrow them. Labels need your participation to survive. They feed on reaction, defensiveness, and emotional energy. When you refuse to engage at that level and instead focus on execution, labels lose relevance. People cannot maintain an outdated story when your actions contradict it daily. Changing the narrative also demands internal alignment. You must first stop believing the limitations assigned to you. External narratives lose power once they no longer live inside you. When your self-image is rooted in discipline, preparation, and growth, external opinions become background noise. You move differently, you speak with clarity, you make decisions with confidence. That internal shift is often the first visible sign that the narrative is already changing. There is a leadership element to this as well. When others see someone rise without bitterness, without excuses, and without constant explanation, it becomes permission. It shows what is possible over time. Your success stops being personal and starts being symbolic. You become proof. Proof challenges narratives more effectively than confrontation ever could. Another reality is that changing the narrative requires responsibility. You cannot wait for systems to adjust before you perform at your best. Responsibility puts you in control. It removes dependency on approval and replaces it with ownership. When you take full ownership of your development, your standards, and your output, the story surrounding you shifts from victimhood to authority. The most powerful narratives are written through consistency. One good day won't do it. One breakthrough won't do it. It is the accumulation of disciplined days that changes how people speak your name. Eventually, the same environment that once questioned you begins to rely on you. At that point, the narrative has changed, not because you fought it, but because you rose above it. So here's the takeaway. Stop wasting energy being mad about how the world is, and start putting that energy into becoming exceptional anyway. You may not control the bias, the labels, or the assumptions, but you do control your preparation, your effort, and your attitude. And when you walk in excellence long enough, the same door they thought about closing becomes the door they beg you to stay in. Don't ask for permission to be great. Don't wait for fairness to show up. Outwork it, outgrow it, outsmart it. Because when you do that, you don't just keep your job, you change the narrative. And that, my friend, is how you really win.